There we go. We're in. We're cracking. We're rolling. Mate, welcome to the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on, Alex. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Oh, mate. You know, I think what was it Sex and Zombies program? That's one of the biggest
Yeah,
thing that made me friggin' chuckle like my hat off, man. I think that's brilliant.
thank you, man. Yeah, I kind of made my Sex and Zombies program as a bit of a joke, but not really, because I feel like deep down it's in a lot of ways what so many people realistically train for. You know, they want to look good, they want to be confident, they want to be able to perform, whether that's on a race or in a competition or somewhere else,
You
and
know,
then be prepared for whatever, zombie apocalypse, whatever life throws your way. So since launching my Sex and Zombies program, I found that message really resonates with a lot of people.
I think it's really cool to see the kind of switch in the fitness industry, right? Of people giving a shit about what they can do rather than just like, hey, I want like shredded glutes, for example, right? And you're like, that's mega, guys. Like, don't get me wrong, if that's your good thing, go do your thing. I'm massive all about it. I like burgers too much, so that's not going to be me. So then I have to look I have to look the other way, right? About okay, what can I do with this body that I'm kind of attached to? And it's kind of cool seeing the general population being like, hey, I want to snatch a barbell, or I want to be able to climb over a gate, or climb a rope and run around. You're like, this is rad, man.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and I got it to a fairly competitive level in the endurance world. And I think for a long time, a lot of what drove me to keep training and competing and that kind of thing, apart from just the competition aspect itself of seeing, can I get better? Can I, you know, beat this person who's beaten me in the past and all that kind of stuff was just the confidence of knowing what my body was capable of. And as I started to explore some other sides of fitness, strength training, that kind of thing, I realized that in terms of that confidence piece, in terms of just feeling good, not only feeling good physically, but feeling good about what you can do, feeling strong, resilient, all of those sorts of things that had motivated me to train hard in the past. There was so many areas of opportunity in different aspects of fitness, getting stronger, getting more flexible, that didn't necessarily align with just one hyper specific goal, like continue to get better at the marathon or whatever it is. So rather than continue to pursue that one hyper specific objective, I found myself really liking just exploring what my body was capable of and how can I get better in this area, and just looking for weak links. And just trying to feel as confident in as many things as possible. And it's been a really fun journey into that hybrid or concurrent training space.
It really is a journey, right? And it's not just a physical journey. You go through a mental and a bit of a spiritual journey with it as well, right? Like you learn so much when you're like, oh, okay, well, this is a different stimuli, and this is smacking me in the face. And I thought I was pretty fit and pretty resilient. And the next thing, like whether it's me, for example, I try and do a bloody 5K run and I feel like I'm dying, or if it's the other way around, you try and get under a barbell and you're like, what the hell? This feels like the world. And you're like, yeah, like you're pretty good at like this amount of things, and when you're trying to
Yeah.
like open up that circle to a little bit more like mediums of fitness, let's be honest, and you're just like, oh wow, like a lot of things could kick my ass. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Maybe we should train that a little bit more.
Exactly. I feel like when you're training just for one thing, if you specialize in powerlifting or you specialize in running 5Ks or whatever, it can become this very externally motivated thing of, okay, I ran this time, now I want to take 10 seconds off, or I got fifth place, now I want to try to get fourth or third or whatever. And you start measuring yourself externally or validating your accomplishments against what other people have done and that kind of thing. But in the hybrid space, when you start just kind of exploring weak links or trying to do, a dozen things at once or whatever, you're probably not going to be the best at any of it, right? I think that's a challenge a lot of concurrent athletes have faced. Um, and so rather than measuring yourself against, the best people out there or whatever, it really becomes this internal thing of just, okay, what am I bad at and how can I get better? And I've really embraced that sort of internal motivation that I think naturally comes with um, a more broad set of goals, in this hybrid space.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think the athletes that pursue multiple things rather than just a specific niche are usually more okay with little progresses, you know, in different avenues. You're like, oh, okay, I got like a degree here, or I moved to barbell better today, but the weight stayed the same, or you know, I felt better on a run or swim, or my turns got better, and it's just like all those little wins add up to a big thing at the end, right? And if you're hyper fixated on powerlifting, football, it doesn't matter, Zumba, you know, you kind of like, oh, but I want to have my goal tomorrow. And then tomorrow I want my 5 year goal the day after that, you know, and it's like,
Yeah.
it's not really that easy, guys.
Yeah, it really lends itself to that. And not that you can't be this way in a single sport by any means, but I feel like hybrid training really lends itself to that just process orientation. Less fixated on the results and more fixated on just what do I want to do, what do I enjoy, just that daily process of getting a little bit better in whatever it is.
Mm. So I want to go back to the endurance space, right? You mentioned that your career, quote unquote, started back then, right? Talk to me about it.
Yeah, so and I guess if you go way back, I did track and field, I did cross country, I did baseball, tennis, football. I was that kid that played every sport but was never fantastic at all of them. I think that's a fairly common experience for a lot of people that get into hybrid training in the first place. Is the reality is we just weren't good enough at any single sport, right? So we're like, okay, I'm not fast enough at this. It's like I'm not a good sprinter. I'll try long distance. And then I'm like, okay, I'm a little bit, heavy, a little bit muscular compared to some of these other like marathon guys. Maybe I'll try CrossFit. And you just kind of bounce around looking for the thing you're good at, and you realize I'm not really good. Like I'm not great at anything. But I do have range. I can at least be okay at a lot of these things. Uh, and for me personally, I did end up finding one thing I would say great at, um, and that was in obstacle course racing. So I guess about, oh gosh, 10, 12 years ago now, I stumbled across Spartan race in the sport of obstacle course racing. And having a background in a variety of strength sports and endurance sports that I was all okay at. When I did get into my first obstacle course race, I did extremely well. And I ended up signing on to the Spartan race pro team, traveling around the country. Done over 100 of those events. And that was kind of my first experience actually being really good at something, and seeing that there's potential for, true competition or making money or whatever in kind of that concurrent or hybrid training space. So I started to dig into it a lot more seriously and think about, okay, how can I actually get stronger and faster at the same time instead of just bouncing around from one sport to the next and that kind of thing. So it opened this whole new world to me of true concurrent training as opposed to just, haphazard training, a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Mm.
And it's been a heck of a journey. Learned a lot along the way, and through some of my accomplishments and learnings and that kind of thing, I've been able to guide a lot of other people that have similar concurrent training goals. Have a coaching business now that specializes in concurrent training. But that's kind of how I got into it. Was first in that obstacle course racing.
Mm. They are one hell of an event. Like if nobody out there or if anybody out there hasn't done an obstacle course, even if it's just, you know, 3K and you're gonna walk the whole thing, right? I think it's one hell of an event. And I think everybody should do it, mate. I think it's so much fun. It's fun to do with your bodies and it's challenging, you know, it's physical. I mean, pardon the pun, but it's obstacles in your way and you've got to be able to try and navigate that, right? And I think we need that. I think humans need that, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, before my first obstacle race, I was into fitness, right? Like I worked out, I trained. Um, I don't know if I would go so far as to say I was passionate about fitness. I was just kind of interested in it. And after that first obstacle course race, um, one, it's so much fun, and two, there's a weak spot or a weak link in there for everybody. So you get out there, and no matter what type of athlete you are, something on that course is going to kick your ass, right?
Mm.
Um, and something about that I think is just tremendously motivating. You're like, I want to do that again, and I don't want that part. I don't want that obstacle or that hill or whatever. I don't want that to be as much of a challenge next time I get to this. So there's always something to work on, which again kind of goes back into that process orientation or just finding weak spots. Okay, how can I work on this? How can I work on that? Develop different skills and aspects of your fitness. Um, so after that first race, I think I really did become passionate about it, and that kickstarted this lifelong journey for me.
And like everybody's got an obstacle in front of them that they're fearful of, right? And like I did a tough mudder, 8 years ago, right? And you see everybody just smashing through these obstacles, great. And then there's one obstacle where they kind of take a step back and they're like, shit, this is the one. This is the one that makes me face the mental barrier, right? Rather than just that physical barrier. And for me, it was like lying underwater, and there's like some mesh, and you got to pull yourself up, and it's a little bit claustrophobic. I don't really like tight spaces,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm like, Jesus, okay, like let's try and get through this, yeah. And I think that is such a great thing for people to do. You're with your
Yeah.
buddies, you're in that controlled environment. Obviously, there's the marshals around, you're in a safe spot. Like if shit really hits the fan, they can pull you out. You're gonna be okay. But you're forced to deal with some barrier mentally by pushing through it physically. And
Absolutely.
I think that's the best thing about OCR training, man. I think it's so cool. It's so cool seeing like people just get out there and be like, okay, well, I guess we got to figure this out. I got to get over this hill, literally.
Yeah. Well, like you said, that kind of you have a safe space, controlled environment to kind of go after some of these challenges that might otherwise scare the shit out of you. You're not gonna like go dig a mud pit in your backyard and put yourself in the claustrophobic space or whatever, right? But I think it gets to the heart of a big problem that definitely easier said than done in terms of overcoming it, but just avoiding avoiding our weak spots, avoiding things that make us afraid of just avoiding the problem, right? You see that all the time, even in fitness, like they're like, well, my knee hurts, for example. So they end up avoiding things that work that body part, right? And it might be a good strategy in the short term, but long term, you're just, further facilitating this weak link. Um, so whether we're talking about a sore knee or an obstacle that scares you or something in life, I think avoidance of those challenges is a big problem. But obviously easier said than done to start just tackling those problems head on and having the confidence to do so. So like you said, in an obstacle race, having that controlled environment, that safe space to meet some of these challenges head on, I think helps people make a big psychological shift in terms of, stop with the avoidance and just get after it. There is no way around or avoidance that you can, implement an obstacle race. You just have to go through. So I think that's why it's such a powerful experience for a lot of people mentally. For people that haven't done it, they're probably like, what's with the deal of all these people just loving Spartan race and Tough Mudder and that kind of thing. But once you get out there and experience it, you realize how powerful it can actually be psychologically.
And the biggest thing that stood out to me, man, was the community behind it. It seems like whether it's obstacle racing or whether it's endurance racing, like there's always this big community that just wants you to do well, man. Just like, hey, let's just kind of get to this finish line. You might smash my time, and that's great. I hope you do. But let's just get to that finish line, and then we can share a beer at the end, right? And I think everybody's
Yeah.
hyping each other up. There's a little dance beforehand, and I think it's so cool, man. It really does bring out a different side of people. In that community aspect. And if you're struggling on an obstacle, they're going to pull you through. There's always somebody in front of you and behind you that's going to end up either looking in front or turning around behind and pulling you through that obstacle. And still remember like the big kind of like drums, like the tunnels you got to go through and real long. And basically you have to rely on somebody the other side to pull you out the other side, and
Right.
I think that's awesome, man. Like that, it kind of forces community in a way, but it forces community through struggle. And I think that's what cities and settlements were kind of made for, right? And we've
Yeah.
lost it. And it's again, it sounds so primal. It sounds so primal, so dumb, so less evolved. But we need to remind ourselves of that. And I think when you come out and you've showered, and you've had your beer and your sandwich at the end, and I think you look at people a little differently. It's had that common struggle together rather than just like competition all the time.
Absolutely, man. I mean, there's very few things that I think that human beings have to do or were meant to do. I think people have tremendous freedom to live the kind of life that they want to live. But
Yeah.
if there was just a handful of things that I think humans were truly meant to do, it's one, be outside, um, two, move your body physically, um, and three, participate in some sort of group or social endeavor. So I think if you can combine all three of those things, get outside, move your body, as part of a group, I think that's one of the most human, natural things that you can do, and I think that's why so many people end up enjoying it a ton once they actually get out there and give it a shot.
That's another great point, man. You're exposed to the elements, right? It's outside. If it rains, guess what? You're gonna get wet. That's
Yeah.
like that's it. How many times do people cancel events or even sport now, man? Like, I'm English, so everybody plays football growing up, as in like European football, soccer, as I've obviously it's called over in the States and many other countries. But I played rugby as well, right? And how many games were called off because of the weather? And you're like, guys, like we kind of need to be able to just play and everything. We live in UK, like it's always going to be shite weather. We need to be able to like just get through this. And I think that's another thing. Like it's raining, it's a little stormy. Granted, if it's dangerous, obviously call it off. I'm not saying go out there when it's a frozen pitch and throw yourself around, but it's I think we need to be able to come across and kind of face a little bit of mother nature sometimes. It's raining sideways, go out for a run, just run around your
Exactly.
block. It's uncomfortable, you're
Yeah.
going to feel cold and you're going to want to go home, and it's going to be a really miserable experience, and you don't want to take your phone because it might get wet and break and all that, but it's great, just run around your block, man.
Exactly. I think a lot of people, when it comes to like this idea of toughness or grit, people think it's like a personality trait or something that you can force, and you just tell someone, well, like just toughen up and do it. Um, but again, that's one of those things that's so much easier said than done. Like toughness is really just it's a culmination of preparedness. It's a skill set. It's something you have to learn to be able to do. So when it comes to like getting out there in the elements or doing some crazy event, um, some people aren't prepared for that, and if they go out there, like they could literally just get broken down and hate it so much they would never want to do it again, kind of thing. So I think just like with any sort of workout program, right, like that idea of progressive overload, like meet somebody where they're at, like what level of challenge are you prepared for. So for some people that might mean go out and run a Tough Mudder on a rainy day. For some people it might mean it's it's raining, just park at the far end of the parking lot and walk into the grocery store in the rain instead of running in from the closest spot. um whatever level of challenge it is for you that seems uncomfortable but also manageable and approachable, so that you can and meet that challenge head on and be successful and develop the confidence you need to progressively meet little harder and harder challenges over time.
I think that's a really beautiful point, man. I really do. And I think people try and throw themselves in head first in the deep end, right? And it's like, guys, like, your mental toughness building might be eating three pretty healthy meals a day and not adding in an exercise. Start real,
Right.
real small, basic. At the end of the day, we had to crawl first. You had to roll over, then you had to crawl as babies. And unfortunately, we're just at a stage where it's like, well, we always move. So our toughness needs to be a little bit more quote unquote extreme, right? Because we need to do
Yeah.
something that's a little bit of that level. You're way above my level, let's be honest. But if you if you start off and you're always at a desk, okay, well maybe we change it to a standing desk.
Yeah.
Just start off so basic, so small, like something that is barely going to change your habits, right? Barely going to change your daily routine. So then you can just slowly implement it, and it's chess, not checkers. At the end of the day, man, we're not just bouncing to the other end of the board. We're taking one piece, we're moving it one square, and you're going home. You're going trying again the next day, and that's what it is. And eventually, you'll be an absolute savage like yourself.
I feel like there's this idea that gets perpetuated in like pop culture, talking about inspiration and motivation of like, if at first you don't succeed, try and try again, right? Like we've all heard stuff like that. Um, or stories of like how many times some famous person or billionaire, how many times they got told no, or how many times they failed before they were finally successful. We've all heard these types of stories, and well, there's certainly elements of truth to that. I think in a lot of cases, those are the outliers, not the norm. I'm all about training people to be successful, not training them to fail. I think take your average person, if you put them in a situation where they failed 100 times, what's going to make them actually want to get up and try that 101st time? We have examples in history of people who did, and they were finally successful, and we kind of romanticize those stories. But what's the reality of that actually happening for everyone, for your everyday person? So I think it's really important when we talk about whether it's building mental toughness or progressing a workout program or some sort of entrepreneurship challenge, starting a business. People often aim really, really high and fail. And if you reflect back on some of those stories you might have been told, it's easy to tell that person, well, just try and try again. But it's so much easier said than done to have failed a lot of times and keep going. So in terms of designing a workout program or whatever it is, give people something that they can actually be successful with, because that's what truly builds confidence. If you give someone too hard of a goal and they fail, that's not instilling confidence, not instilling the motivation for them to want to do it again. And I think that's one of the big things that we get wrong just with how we talk about things like toughness in our culture, is we encourage people to aim too high and have these huge goals, and then that just ends up making them demotivated in the long run. So like you said, it might just be a matter of, okay, you're going to eat 3 healthy meals and start there, and then start building.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a really great point, especially when we're dealing with general population, right? Like the untrained, unmental side of the population. Like for ourselves, if you give ourselves a goal or somebody gives us a goal that just seems like it's out of reach, we're still probably gonna try and get there. It's like, I'm going to break myself down to see if it's possible. But if you get somebody
Right.
off the street and you give them something like that, they're going to give you a middle finger and they're going to walk out the door, right? And it's like, yeah, I think that's a
Exactly.
really, really good point of like, no, give them the little breadcrumbs that leads them to Hansel and Gretel's house. Don't just be like, it's in the forest, go fucking find it. You're like, no, 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 because people aren't just going to turn up. They're just going to be like, you know what,
Yeah.
this is too hard. I'm going to go home. Fitness is too much. It's not for me. My thyroid or
Yeah.
something, and just come out with some bullshit. And it's like, no, no, it's our job. Like, this is why we have a job. We need to be able to slowly coach them. All right. Again, pardon the pun, coach them to get there. Just give them something, give them small wins. And I think that's a really, really good point, man.
Exactly. And for example, if you look at my average day, I wake up at 4:30 a.m. and right now it's winter here in Minneapolis, so it's super cold outside, super icy. So I wake up at 4:30 a.m. and I bike to the gym. That's how I start my day every day to do my workout, kick off my work day, all that kind of stuff, and bike home. And time and time again, I hear people they learn this about me and they're like, that's so tough, or like I don't have that kind of motivation to like wake up that early and bike and whatever. And I always want to get the point across, like it's it's not that I'm tough. Like it doesn't take much toughness or motivation or willpower on my part. I legitimately want to do that, and it doesn't take a lot of toughness or motivation to do something that you want to do. It just I've kind of built myself up over time and got to this point where that actually is the thing that I want to do. Take somebody else and you tell them like, hey, you want to wake up at 4:30 and bike through the snow to the gym? They're like, fuck no, I don't want to do that. So obviously it would take a lot more toughness for that person to do that thing than it does for me, because it's something I actually want to do. So instead of trying to force someone else to be tough and do this thing that they don't want to do that you might, it's how can we gradually kind of shape their behavior and kind of coax them into wanting to do the thing that's good for them. Because I think forcing yourself to do something you don't want to do is inherently unsustainable. All of the healthy things that I do in my life, I'm not forcing myself to do any of them. I'm doing these things because I legitimately want to or I enjoy it. And I think we often put ourselves up on this pedestal, and because we do hard things, we think that we're tough. But in the reality is we do hard things because we've gradually exposed ourselves to them in a context where we've learned to want them and learned to enjoy them. And we can't just expect someone else to muster up this toughness that we ourselves don't even really have.
Mm. That's a fucking fantastic point and fascinating. It's something that, again, I think as fitness professionals, right, is the way that we like to pay our bills. We forget about it. We take it for granted, man. We take the work that we put in through sport, through high school, through whatever, the journey up to here. We take that for granted and we're like, everybody needs to think the way I think and shut up or pull up, or the other way around, pull up or shut up. And it's like, no, like we need to meet them where they are. And sometimes that's really frigging basic in our eyes. And that's okay.
Yeah,
That is okay. Let's just get them one step closer to wherever they want to go, you know,
yeah,
um, and let's do it the easiest way we can for them at the end of the day. So then they can sustain it and then they don't need us, and then, yeah, maybe
yeah,
they're running like crazy obstacle courses with like three weight vests on them and pulling a sled and okay, fine. But that's down the line. We need to meet them where they're at rather than them meeting us where we're at. And I think that is, again, a really great point. Young coaches, old coaches, are somewhere in between. Meet them where they're at, not the other way around.
exactly, dude. So many of these people we are talking about that I think a lot of fitness professionals would kind of like shake their head and be like, this person's lazy or this or that because they're not doing all the fitness that I'm doing, right? Like when you actually get to know some of these people, some of these people that don't exercise are the toughest people I've ever met. When I talk about their work schedule, the stress they put up with it at home and life and work, and whether they're working 60, 80 hours a week or doing this or that, it's like that's not shit I would want to do. That's fucking hard. It's just a different type of hard. So I think we gotta ditch the narrative that like people are lazy or unmotivated or anything like that. Like they're tough. They're just using their stress bucket is full of other shit that you might not have to deal with. Um, so instead of trying to get these people to be even a little bit tougher than they already are, just how can we expose them to the joy of fitness and the joy of physical movement and that kind of thing, and get them to actually want it for themselves and not make it another thing they got to force themselves to do, because it's really hard.
100%. It's supposed to aid your life, right? It's supposed to help. Fitness is supposed to help, not take away. It's supposed to, we say it all the time, it's supposed to aid your life, not be your life. you know,
Yeah.
like, get out of the gym. What are you doing? It's bloody Sunday evening. Go home. Go see your family. Like, what are you doing in the gym at this time? Are you going for an event? No. I'm like, yeah, well, piss off. Like you've done the work. Now go home. And
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
those small steps, man.
I mean,
But
fitness has added so much to my life. I think of like the all the best experiences I've ever had, all the coolest things I've ever done. There's some level of fitness behind it, whether we're talking about something extreme like uh, a super extreme hike or something like that that I literally had to be fit for, to even just some like hectic travel, like dealing with jet lag and walking all over a new city with luggage and shit like that. Like being fit for those sorts of things makes it so much more enjoyable.
mm,
You can do a day like that and not have your feet aching or whatever, and like be able to carry your luggage up some stairs. And I think that's something we take for granted too, that a lot of people just can't enjoy all the experiences that life has to offer in the same way that you can when you're super fit. So uh, that's why I'm so passionate about it. Really, is just bringing that experience to more people and saying, hey, if you're fit, if you're just a little bit fitter than you are right now, that opens up so many more opportunities, so many more ways to enjoy the life that you have.
mm. Same with illness, right? Like you make yourself a little bit more bulletproof. And I know the fittest and the healthiest I've been, like, people around me are sick as a dog and I got nothing. And if there's times where you take your training a little bit less seriously, you're probably eating a little bit off sometimes, maybe more than sometimes. I start getting the sniffles, your throat starts hurting, or you don't sleep enough. Again, same. And it's like, oh, okay, like, I'm starting to take this for granted. I need to keep this in the
Yeah,
forefront of my mind. Okay, let's get back on the grind. Let's back on the bandwagon, back on that train. So if the flu comes around every year for that season, okay, cool. I'm just gonna brush it off. It's not gonna hit me.
yeah. I think a lot of it, I think about it a lot about like finance. Not sure how into like investing or anything like that you are the stock market, right? But there's always going to be there's good days and bad days, right? Like you might have your 401k or your investment portfolio and whatever, and then recession hits or everything drops by 10-20%. And those moments are scary, but you just kind of got to ride it out, wait for it to come back up. And that's a lot how I think about like injuries and illness and that kind of thing. It's like those years that the stock market drops 20%, right? Like it sucks, but the more money you have or the more wealth you have, the more you can weather some of those storms. Same thing with your fitness. When you're at a high level of fitness, you might still get hurt, but if you think about an illness or an injury kind of knocking you down 20-30%, if your 100% is that much higher than an untrained individuals or someone who's less fit, you might be down 20 or 30% and still be far more capable than so many other people walking around on the planet, right?
Mm.
So illness strikes everybody, injury strikes everybody. It's just how fit do you want to be to deal with it? I'd rather tweak my back deadlifting, have it be a little bit sore, but still be capable enough to live my life, or maybe I just have to, you know, only pull 300 or 400 pounds instead of 500 or whatever for a couple weeks while it heals. I'd much rather be in that situation than be the person that, tweaks their back, picking up a laundry basket at home and then they can't walk. Knowing that that kind of stuff is going to affect everybody, whether you're fit or not. Just think about, how high up that hill are you, and when you get knocked down a little bit, what are you still going to be able to do?
That's it, man. You're making yourself a little bit more bulletproof, you know? Like I kind of joke about it all the time. I was like, it's it, when you're taking a class, for example, like especially in a CrossFit gym, it's like, it's my goal is to make you bad motherfuckers. I
I
was like,
love
why? I was
it.
like, I'm trying to make you harder to kill here, and it's usually it's a little bit, people laugh and whatever. And I was like, well, that's kind of what we're doing. Like, so when you go outside and you might get in a car crash, God forbid, you don't want to wish that on anybody, right? Not even your worst enemy, but it's like you hopefully we can walk away and be like, you know
Yeah,
what? It's just a little bit of like soft tissue damage and flesh wounds. Don't worry about it. I can walk out it off rather than being a little bit softer, less fit, less robust. And you walk down the stairs, for example, trip, and then you break your back or break your leg or something. It's like, no, 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 that's not what we want. Let's slowly make ourselves harder to kill.
it's wild. I think back on one example. Obviously, and exercise is great. It can only go so far. There's uh no like cure for mortality, right? But I think back to one example of a client. It was their first month exercising, and we were doing some like cable chest presses, right? And if you do a cable chest press, sometimes the cable kind of rubs on your upper arm a little bit. Um, and this person was complaining. They're like, the cable's, it's touching my arm. I'm like, yeah, I mean, the cable's gonna touch your arm. That's just kind of what happens, right? And I kid you not, this person came back the next week and their arms were black and blue, like just from the
Wow.
light pressure of, and realistically, we're talking like maybe 5 to 10 pounds per handle on a cable chest press. This person's first month exercising, so maybe a pound of pressure or so on the cable on their upper arm was enough to bruise them and make them black and blue. And like that's how soft you can become. And this person kept exercising, and before you know it, they're doing 3 to 4 times that amount of weight. No bruises on their arms anymore from the cable touching it. And I think sometimes we forget, like, yeah, we're making people stronger, but we're we're seriously impacting their overall health and just ability to tolerate all sorts of physical stress.
Wow. That's insane, man. And I think we take that for granted again, because it's just kind of blood force trauma and we're used to it. We're used to kicking the shit out of ourselves and be like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm a little sore. All right, well, back to the gym, back on a run. Like, let's keep going.
Yep.
But that's so cool, man. Again, dude, I just want to say thank you for this conversation, man. It's gone so quick. I'm gonna get kicked out in a minute with this bloody Zoom thing, but that's okay. We're gonna have to do it again sometime, man. I got so many more questions. Like you're a fascinating dude. The way you train's awesome, and you help a lot of people, mate. So we're gonna have to do this again.
Absolutely, man. Just reach out and we can set up another one of these things. But I appreciate your time and really enjoyed the conversation.
Let's do it, man. Again, thank you, brother. get back in the gym.
Awesome, man. You too. Have a great day, Alex.
All right, man. Bye, everybody.